my name is Ricky Huynh. I'm one of the application engineers at Hawkridge Systems, and today we're going to be going over harnessing. And as with any other e-demo or webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to ask it in the questions box. Just go ahead and type that out. And I do have another staff member with me on the line that can also, answer questions as well. I'll see if I'm getting a lot kind of during the demo. I'll see if I can answer it right away. But if not, then there's also space and time afterwards to ask questions. So today what we're going to do is go over SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D and then take a look at the harnessing in 3D as well. So we pop over straight into our SOLIDWORKS. You can see here that what we have is a fireplace insert, and it's going to be for a gas fireplace. And if I kind of zoom into here, if you're familiar with this, this is in SOLIDWORKS. This is the gas log that we're going to have, and then we're also going to be routing this up using SOLIDWORKS routing, and then we're going to connect it up with our electronic spark. Also with our gas valve is going to be located here. We also have a transformer, which is going to be for our low voltage, and this is going to be for where our PCB connector, the PCB board is going to be, and then we have our connector. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to insert another connector onto here, and then we're going to route this up into the entire system. Okay. So before I go through this, there's actually, you'll see that I have these sketch lines. It's both yellow and blue. And what that represents is a sketch path. And that's going to show me, and pretty much I've did this already, it's a 3D sketch, so something inside of SOLIDWORKS. I'm giving it a predefined path of a suggested route to go along. Okay. So when I route up this harness, right, and how that's going to be driven is off of 2D, it's going to go ahead and follow along that path. So popping over to SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D, it is a separate program, and it is Microsoft SQL database driven. And you'll see here it's also based off of project-based philosophy. So in this case, when I'm looking at the project manager, you can see that I actually have one specific project that's highlighted in red. And the reason it's highlighted in red is because I have it opened in 3D, so it's being opened by someone else, in this case myself. But it means that it allows for cross collaboration. So if I go ahead and open this up, it'll give you the message that says, hey, this is also opened by somebody else, so you still want to open it. In this case, I do want to go ahead and use this project. And then you'll see here that I actually have a document book. And inside of this document book, I have quite a few schematics and pages here already, right? And we'll add a few more. But you'll see that I actually have this cover page. Inside here, of course, you'll have the name of your project. In addition, there's also a drawings list. And in this drawings list, it's going to automatically populate as I add more and more reports into here. And then we'll take a look at our line diagram. In this line diagram, pretty much it gives you a simplified representation of the entire project, of the overall project. And for example, in here you already see we have quite a few components. We have our transformer, we have our Fireplace controller, we have our electronic spark, as well as our gas valve. And what I'm going to do is insert a connector. So I'm going to go to my insert symbols and then browse through them. And of course you can see we have quite a few symbols in here already, motors, different pneumatic cylinders. For example, our gas valve is in here as well, circuit breakers, and then we also have our connectors. So if there's something in here that you want to use, you can definitely use and leverage that. But if there's not, you can always create your own symbol as well. So in this case, a Molex connector is what we're going to use. This is actually something that we had created ourselves at Hawkridge Systems, and then what we'll do is we'll place it in here. And notice how it automatically gives you a mark and route. That's something that you can customize before and after the fact. And then in addition, what I want to do now is add the manufacturer part. So I'll go to manufacturer part, and I'll go ahead and search. And I am for a specific manufacturer, but you'll just see kind of here some of the ones that are available for our connectors, like Allen Bradley, Legrand, Leroy Somer. In this case, I'm looking for Molex. So I'm going to go to search, and you'll see here that I'm going to bring in a 12 circuit. And I'm going to add that in, and that's going to be represents pretty much my back shell. And then I'm going to click search again, and then I'm going to be able to identify how many pins I want on this. In this case, I want 7 pins. So I'll indicate 7, I'll add that in, adds in all of those. So here I have my back shell, as well as my pins. So what I've done is I've associated that connector with that manufacturer part, right? Which once again, it leverages the pins, how many pins there will be. Once I bring it into SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D, it'll have that information in there. So then afterwards, all I need to do is just connect up this connector with our transformer. We have our transformer, we have our electronic spark here as well. And then we have our gas valve. Now actually how we do the pin-to-pin connections is going to be in our control diagram. So if I pop over to my control diagram, you're going to see here that I have the 120 volt AC. It's going to come in through the top. It's going to go through my transformer over here and into my connector. And I also have my spark plug as well as my gas valve. And that connector that I just inserted, right, I want to go ahead and insert into here and then connect them up. So by going to insert connector, right, it's going to ask me, do you want to create a new one or accept an existing one? It senses that maybe I have one in there or created already, which is at P1. And then I'll go to P1 and I'll go ahead and select. And here I have the advantage of doing a dynamic connector with a pin symbol. Or I can just select a symbol that I've already used, right? But in this case, we will use a dynamic connector with the pin symbol. And the advantage here is I don't have to use all my 12 circuits that I've indicated for when I indicated that the 12 circuit minifig junior, right? I can choose which ones I want. So say for example, I just need 8, right? I can identify 8. I can just uncheck those. But in this case, I do want all 12. So I'll indicate all 12, and then of course you can orient your symbol, but I do want it in this correct orientation. And then what I'll do is just line this up. So left click and place it, and then now we'll go ahead and connect this. Now one of the ways that we can do this, there's numerous ways. You can do a copy and paste. And the advantage of a copy and paste is that I know it's going to be the same exact line wire style. Right? So for example, the same one here when I'm doing my yellow, say if you're inheriting this project from somebody else, right? And maybe you don't know exactly which one that is, you can do a copy and paste. You can do multiple, for example, this red and black, and then paste those in there. I'm just doing a control copy and paste, control C and control V to paste it. But of course, you know, if you're the one that knows exactly how this is going to be connected or the wires aren't there yet, right? You can go ahead and go into single line wire and then choose the one that you want. In this case, I want to go ahead and use an 18 gauge for this guy. So in this one, I'm going to use the orange for our first one. So I'll connect it up to my 8. And you'll even notice subtly that there are these inference lines, very similar to SOLIDWORKS, which allows you to pretty much guides you along, you know, creates your horizontal and vertical so that it lines up to the pins correctly. So I'm going to the purple here, and go ahead and select my wires, connect it up, and lastly we have brown. So after we have all that set up, now we want to go ahead and number our wires. So that's going to be under our process. We'll go ahead and number new wires. It's going to ask me, do I want to number them? And I do want to number them, right? If you did have any existing wires on here, you can just basically renumber your wires, right, so that they're more in order. But in this case, since we didn't have any in there already, right, we'll go ahead and number all the wires. So once that's done, we have our connector in here now. Our objective is to now add this to our harness. So how we do that is you'll go ahead and select all of them. I just did a window select. You'll right click, and you'll go ahead and add remove from harness. And once you do that, you'll notice that it brings in the connectors, it brings in all the wires. It says add to harness. You can also have the option to remove as well. So in this case, I'll press OK, and I now want to indicate which harness I want to add it to. In this case, this H1. Click select, and then it adds it in. To verify, I just want to make sure I'm in my project. I'll go to my harnesses and expand this out. Under my components, you'll see here I do have that Molex that I added in, that P1. So we're good to go. Now that we have all set up in the electrical 2D side, we want to take now a look at 3D. And the great thing is, because I have them both open on the 2D and the 3D side, right? Imagine if there's two different people, and the mechanical engineer is inside SOLIDWORKS, they're working, they're adding in their components. They have the option to look on the electrical side, and this is an add-in that you would just go ahead and turn on. And we'll pop this out, and you'll see that it lists all the components that's inside this project, right? The electrical engineer has inserted into their schematic. If I go ahead and click on Hide Already Inserted Components and expand this out, you'll see on the mechanical side, it'll just tell me, hey, this is what I have left, right? If there's multiple on here and there's components already inserted, I can associate them. Or if they're not inserted at all, what I can do is go ahead and add them in. So I'll go ahead and just add in my back shell. Just add in one of those. And using the SOLIDWORKS mating techniques, I can add in some coincident mates here. This face and this one. So nothing too new, right? So on the mechanical side, it's leveraging what already is still existing, right? It's going to use a routing engine to route up all the wires here. In addition, you'll also notice that I don't have to worry too much about the connection points because this component already has it. So of course, as you're designing, there'll be cases where you can use existing geometry, but if not, then you can always create your own using our electrical component wizard inside the SOLIDWORKS Electrical. It'll then walk you through adding in whatever you need, like your connection point, your route points, and any kind of things like mate references. So once we go ahead and do that, we'll go ahead and route this up. So it's really simple. We'll go to SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D, and then route harnesses. I'll select all my harnesses, press OK. And what it's doing in the background, once again, it's referring to that sketch and saying, okay, route along this path. And what it's connecting up is it's looking at the SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D side. It's using that schematic, and it's going to go ahead and drive pretty much our routes, right? How things are connected. And as you can see here, our harness is completed. So I look into here, we have our routes, and then you can see it routes all the way through to our systems all the way around. Now, we want to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at the first part, and then we'll kind of assume the same thing on the right on the end of it. But you can actually edit your route. So once again, this is using the SOLIDWORKS routing engine, and I can simply add in some tangencies here. So I'll go ahead and rotate to get myself in a little bit better position, and then I can simply add in some relations, right? So I'm just adding in some tangent relations. Numerous ways to do this. You can window select as I'm doing here, or you can do a control select. The main thing is you're just selecting two things at once, right? So just adding in relations, and what that does is going to adding a tangent relation between pretty much that stub as well as our route, and then the same thing here, right? This one's a little bit harder to do a window select because there's so many wires. So probably control select is best in this scenario. So what I'll do is I'll just do the first end. You kind of understand the process, right? It's going to be the same thing on the end as well. And now what it gives me is, once I exit my sketch, right, you can see the wires. It's going to be more representative of the path that I'm looking for, right? So I'll go ahead and save us some time. The same process would be done over here, right? You would select tangencies, and you would do the same at these points. In addition, you can also add in bends. So once I exit out of this component, you'll see, for example, here where I have junctions, I can also add in some bends. So once again, using the routing engine, you can add in bends by indicating where, and then exiting out of my sketch, right? And then it'll create that bend there for us. Later on, we'll go ahead and use that for our flattened drawing. Once all we have this set up, right, this gives us our lengths already. We can go back to our SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D and give us our reports. But if we want a nice, clean way to view this and send it out to manufacturing, for example, right, we can also flatten this out. So by going to flatten route, right, I can indicate once again my harness. I'll go ahead and press OK. And I'll click Yes to rebuild. And then I'll go ahead and select here for annotation and manufacture. Now, if you're doing something more like a nail board, then you'll go ahead and choose manufacture. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and do an annotation drawing. I'll do all my connectors, right? And I'll have this create a drawing for me. I'm going to have none of these connector tables, don't need them now, but indicate that I do want some B landscape. I'm also going to indicate my length here. This is going to pretty much predefine what's going to be my center, what it's going to be drawn around. Serve as my center point for my drawing, for instance. Pressing OK. It'll then create my annotation drawing. Then we have our drawing here. Right? And of course, we'll go ahead and remove anything that's unnecessary. It doesn't affect the model at all. Right? Just creates my drawing in here. Move these around. Up to this point, you can also add in balloons. Because we are in the SOLIDWORKS drawing, you can add balloons, build materials which have item numbers, right? Or you can just send this out. Now, say we want a little bit more information. Say we want, for example, like our connection labels, right? You can go into our control schematic, right? And then how we can do that is create a project drawing. So we're going to go to SOLIDWORKS Electrical drawing, and we're going to go to project drawing. And what that's going to allow us to do is also going to take in all this information here, and it's going to put it into my SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2D, right? It's almost creating like a DWG file, for instance. And then now if I pop back over here, notice that this is not something that I had to do manually, right? But it brings that in. So I have all of my information in here now. If I want to add in more information, like for example, maybe I want to bring in some connection labels, right? Or for example, this 12-pin connector inside here. I can go ahead and go into my drawing and then add that in there. So for example, right where I had my insert connector, I'm going to also insert connection label, which in this case, I'm going to do it for my P1. I'll do it for my 12-pin and left click. And then what I'm going to do is select it, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to show me my origin, destination, equipotential labels, wire numbers, and wire lengths for that P1 Molex connector. So I now want to put it into, and for example, put it close to it. I'll go ahead and just cut and paste into there, right? Reverse that process. Say I want to do one for the 2 pins, for that P2 and the P4, right? What I'll do is I'll go to my connection labels. In this case, I'll use it for my 2-pin connector, right? I'll go ahead and place that in there, indicate, for example, this is going to be my P2. And then copy and cut and then paste into here. Now I do have the option, I can copy this one over and then change the symbol, right? So not keep going back and forth. But unfortunately, it will create an extra mark for me, right? So in that case, what I'll do is just go back here and create another connection label. And in this case, for my P4, for instance. So what I'll do is I'll cut and then place that into here. Now, once we have all of that set up, right, we have all of our information for our project drawing, right? We have our connection labels next to our connectors, giving us origin, destination, equipotential labels, right? Now we can generate our reports. So if I go to my project and go to my reports, right, you can add in any list for anything that you don't need. For example, a list of cables, I can remove that out. I can delete it. I can also go to add. And say, for example, I want to add in a bill of materials sorted by mark used in harness, for instance. I can go ahead and check on any kind of report in here. You can also create your own custom reports as well. Select that. Press OK. You can even get a preview of what it's going to look like just to make sure it has all the information that you need. And then afterwards, go ahead and generate this drawing. And check those on. And what I'll do is generate those reports for you. So let's take a look at some of the reports. So for bill of materials, right, it's going to give us, for an example, that was the first one where I added it was a mark. We have our manufacturers, also the references for them, and the description. In addition, this one's sorted out by manufacturer, where we have some by HRS. We have some from our Molex, Tyco, and White Rogers. The list of wires used, what origin, destination, the specific wire numbers that we had when we numbered the wires, what kind of gauge it's using. For example, when we use 18 gauge as well as the length. And the same thing here as well. Now the advantage too is if, for instance, I wanted to, for example, use this bill of materials, and say we want to go one step further, right? I can simply add in, I can window select all of my, my project drawing as well as my connection labels. I can go ahead and cut this and also put it into my bill of materials. I'll go ahead and copy and paste, right? And this is going to be more representative. For instance, hey, some people are looking to be able to do that functionality and have that kind of as you would in a drawing, right? You have your bill of materials with your connection labels and everything like that. You can do the same thing inside of SOLIDWORks Electrical 2D, right? So that's a little side benefit there. Afterwards, after you're all done, you can go ahead and then export this out into, for example, some DWG files or a PDF. So to wrap it up, really, once again, the process is the same. If you've used SOLIDWORks Electrical before, or if you haven't, it's creating your schematics in SOLIDWORks Electrical 2D, right? Having your components, how are your connections. You can see here that we had our single line diagram. Once again, the benefit here is it's a simplified representation of how your systems are connected together. For example, our connector to our transformer, the spark, and the gas valve. And then afterwards, use your control to do our specific pin-to-pin connections, right? Leveraging then SOLIDWORks Electrical 3D to say, okay, have all my components in there. By the way, I didn't show it here, but there, for example, if there's certain connectors in some, for example, this one is referencing this component here. If I go ahead and collapse this up, there'll be certain like P2s and P4s. And for example, this is P6, for instance, before. If you have your if the mechanical engineer, instead of waiting for the electrical engineer to insert it into their schematic, you can do it in a parallel process instead of a series where you're waiting for the electrical engineer. The mechanical engineer can already make this up, right? Instead of waiting for the electrical engineer. And then afterwards, what they would do is then associate and say, okay, well, that's what the electrical engineer was P6. I can go ahead and right-click and associate that with P6. So it's, once again, it's less of a serial process and more of a parallel process. Once we all have those components set up, right, we'll go ahead and route up our harnesses in this case. And then if we want to go one step further and flatten it out, and then also create our project drawing. Did you guys have any specific questions regarding kind of anything that I went over, or specific questions? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take a look at the next kind of few webinars coming up, and then if there's any questions that come up, go ahead and once again just put it into our dialog box for our questions and just type that in. So going back to our slide, right, here is what's coming up for October, November for our webinar Wednesdays. And one thing to point out too is November is a little bit different. October, we'll go ahead and finish it out by doing a product demo for simulation. We'll test more modes of failure with Simulation Professional on October 28th. That'll be a product demo, which will be at 10 a.m. And a product education, which follows that up, is at 11 a.m. And for instance, we'll go over SOLIDWORKS Electrical What's New 2016. So that'll begin the What's New 2016 rollouts of the webinars. And going all through November, it'll be product education. And it'll be talking about what's new. For example, on November 4th, we'll talk about what's new in 2016, SOLIDWORKS Part 1. And then we'll talk about 2016 simulation stress analysis afterwards at 11. And then what's new in 2016 PDM at 10 a.m. on the 11th. And then finish up the second part of SOLIDWORKS 2016 Part 2 on the 11th, right? And then, of course, we have some more rollouts for projects and everything, as well as on-site, as well as on the webinars, too. So I wanted to thank you guys for attending. In addition, if you guys have any questions, we have our email as well as our website here to contact us. Here's my email right on the right-hand side, rickyh@hawkridgesys.com, as well as Hawkridge System Support on the left-hand side. And this eventually is going to be posted onto our recorded webinars on our website at hawkridgesys.com/events/recorded-webinars.